There is a quiet distance that many people carry, and they don't know how to explain it. You still pray, you still believe, you still go through your day like everyone else, but something feels far. You have felt this, haven't you? You stand in prayer and your lips move. The words are familiar. You've said them your whole life, but your heart feels somewhere else. Your mind wanders, your attention drifts, and when you finish, you wonder, why didn't I feel anything? Then later, at night, you lie awake. The room is quiet. Your thoughts grow louder, and beneath everything there's a soft feeling. Something is missing. Not dramatic, not overwhelming, just a quiet distance. And this is where many people become worried. They think something is wrong with them. They think their faith is weak. They think they are drifting away. But the mystics knew something most people miss. This feeling is not always a sign of distance. Sometimes it is the beginning of longing. Stay with me. Because the Sufis understood something very gentle. The moment you notice distance is already a form of closeness. Think about it. Before this, you were simply moving through life. You prayed without thinking. You remembered without feeling. There was no question, no discomfort, no searching. But now, something inside you is noticing. And that noticing is not emptiness. It is awareness. It is the heart beginning to wake up. The mystics often describe this like clouds in the sky. The clouds appear, and suddenly you think the sky has disappeared. But the sky was never gone. It was always there. It was simply covered. Your heart is like that sky, and this feeling of distance is just clouds passing through. You are not losing something. You are beginning to notice something. The lovers of God understood this well. They knew that restlessness often comes before nearness, that discomfort sometimes comes before clarity, that longing appears before return. So this feeling, this quiet distance, may not be a problem. It may be an invitation. And here is where something even more surprising begins. Because this distance often appears in the most familiar places, like prayer, like the words you repeat every single day. There is one surah that you have recited more than anything else in your life. You've said it in every prayer. You've heard it since childhood. You know it by heart. And yet many people have never truly entered it. Surah Fatiha. You recite it automatically. You move through it quickly. You know when it begins. You know when it ends. But have you ever paused inside it? Have you ever felt what it is actually saying? The great master taught that the Qur'an speaks differently when the heart listens. And sometimes we hear the words, but we never enter them. It's like looking into a mirror that has gathered dust. The mirror isn't broken. The reflection hasn't disappeared. But the surface is covered, so you assume there's nothing there. But the moment the dust clears, everything becomes visible again. Surah Fatiha is like that mirror. It's not unfamiliar. It's not hidden. It's been with you all along. But the heart hasn't always paused long enough to see it clearly. You've experienced this. You begin your prayer. You recite the surah. Your mind drifts to something else. Work, family, worries, random thoughts. And before you know it, you've finished. The words passed through your lips, but not through your heart. This happens to many people. And the problem is not that you recite it. The real problem is that you never entered it. Because the mystics knew something very subtle. They knew Surah Fatiha was not just a prayer. It was a journey. And this is where Ibn Arabi saw something that changes everything. Ibn Arabi did not see Surah Fatiha as an introduction. He did not see it as a simple opening. He saw it as the entire path. From beginning to end. From distance to nearness. From confusion to clarity. From separation to return. Let that sink in. The surah you recite every day may actually be guiding you step by step, back to closeness, without you even realizing it. Ibn Arabi pointed towards something profound, but he explained it in a simple way. He saw each verse as part of a journey, not a distant spiritual journey, but your own, the journey you are already walking. Think about your life. You wake up, you go through your day, you function normally, but sometimes you feel lost. Nothing is wrong externally, but internally, something feels unsettled. You keep moving, you keep working, you keep speaking to people, but inside there is a quiet search. The mystics recognized this feeling. They said this is how the journey begins, like waves moving on the surface of the ocean. The waves rise, they fall, they move constantly, but beneath them, the ocean remains still. Your thoughts, your worries, your restlessness, these are like waves. But your heart, your deeper self, is the ocean. And Surah Fatiha, according to Ibn Arabi, gently guides you from the waves back to the stillness, without force, without pressure, just through awareness, just through return. And here is what makes this so beautiful. You don't need to travel somewhere else. You don't need to become someone else. You don't need to fix everything at once. You are already walking this path. Every time you recite Surah Fatiha, you are stepping into the journey again. Even if you didn't realize it, even if you felt distracted, even if you felt distant, because the journey begins with something very human, not strength, not perfection, but something much simpler, need. And this is where everything begins to change. The journey does not begin with strength. It begins with need. This is something the mystics repeated again and again. The lovers of God understood that the moment you recognize your need, something inside you softens. And Surah Fatiha begins exactly there, not with power, not with certainty, but with turning. You say the words, often without noticing, but they carry a quiet movement of the heart, a movement from independence to dependence. And this is not a weakness, it is closeness. The world teaches you to be self-sufficient, to rely on yourself, to control everything, to appear strong. But the spiritual path moves in the opposite direction. It teaches you to recognize your need, and you have felt this. There are moments when life becomes heavy, when you don't know what to do, when decisions feel confusing, when you try to stay composed, but inside, you feel overwhelmed. And in those moments, something very natural happens. You turn, maybe quietly, maybe without words, maybe just a feeling, but you turn. The mystics knew that this turning is not failure. It is the beginning of nearness. They often described it like a wound that allows light to enter, not because pain is good, but because pain opens what was closed. You may notice this in your own life. When everything is going smoothly, you forget. You move quickly. You don't pause. But when difficulty appears, you slow down. You become more aware, more sincere, more open. This is not a punishment. It is an invitation. And Surah Fatiha quietly carries this movement. You begin with praise. You acknowledge mercy. You recognize dependence. And then something very important happens. You ask, guide us. These two words sit at the center of everything, because the Sufis knew something most people overlook. Guidance is not just about knowing what to do. It is about being shaped from within. You can know what is right and still struggle to follow it. You can understand the truth and still feel lost. So guidance is deeper than information. It is transformation. You have felt this before. You stand at a crossroads in life, a decision, a conversation, a reaction. You know what the better choice is, but something inside you feels unsettled. You ask quietly, guide, and sometimes the answer doesn't come as a thought. It comes as calm. The storm inside you softens. The confusion becomes quieter. The urgency fades. And suddenly you know what to do, not through force, but through stillness. The mystics described guidance like this. not as lightning, but as calm after the storm, not as sudden brilliance, but as quiet clarity. This is why guide us is not just a request. It is a surrender. It is the heart saying, I don't want to control everything. I want to be led. And this is where Surah Fatiha begins to move deeper. Because once you ask for guidance, your life begins to change in subtle ways. You start noticing things you didn't notice before. Your reactions, your emotions, your habits. The straight path begins to appear in ordinary moments. The mystics knew this well. They said, the path is not somewhere far away. It is hidden inside your daily life. You're in a conversation, and anger begins to rise. This is the path. You feel impatience while waiting. This is the path. You feel sadness while doing something routine. This is the path. The straight path is not only about big decisions, it is about how you walk through these small moments. You see, guidance doesn't remove difficulty. It changes how you meet it. You may still face frustration. You may still feel anxiety. You may still experience sadness. But something inside you begins to shift. You pause more. You notice more. You react less quickly. And this is where something very gentle begins. You start to see your inner world more clearly. Before, you were caught in your thoughts. Now, you begin to notice them. Before, anger carried you away. Now you see it rising. Before, fear filled your chest. Now you observe it. This is the beginning of witnessing. Ibn Arabi pointed toward this quietly. He spoke about seeing without resistance, observing without becoming lost. You don't fight your emotions. You don't judge yourself harshly. You simply notice. And this noticing begins to change everything. Because when you see clearly, you are no longer completely inside the storm. You begin to sense stillness behind it. The mystics knew this step was essential. Without witnessing, the path remains hidden. But once you begin noticing, even gently, something opens. Your life becomes a place of learning. Your reactions become signs. Your emotions become invitations. And slowly, you begin to understand something very beautiful. The path has been with you all along, not somewhere else, right here. And this is where the journey moves even deeper. And when you begin to notice, something new quietly appears, witnessing, not controlling your thoughts, not forcing calm, not trying to become perfect, just noticing. You begin to see anxiety as it rises. You notice anger before it spills out. You feel sadness without immediately running from it. This is subtle, but it changes everything. Because the moment you begin to witness, you are no longer completely inside the storm. The clouds are still there, but now you see the sky behind them. Ibn Arabi pointed toward this gently. He spoke about seeing without resistance, about observing without becoming trapped. The mystics knew that witnessing is not something you create. It is something you remember. You begin to notice your thoughts, but you are not your thoughts. You notice fear, but you are not the fear. You notice restlessness, but you are not the restlessness. And slowly, something inside you relaxes, because you are no longer fighting everything. You are simply seeing. You may experience this late at night. Your mind is busy. Thoughts are moving quickly. Worries appear one after another. But instead of becoming overwhelmed, you notice. You observe. You let the waves pass. And in that quiet witnessing, something soft appears. Stillness. The mystics knew this stillness was always there. Not far away, not difficult, just hidden beneath the noise. And this is where the journey moves naturally toward remembrance. Because once you begin witnessing, your heart begins to return, not through force, but through remembering. You whisper quietly, even without moving your lips, Allah, and something shifts. Not dramatically, not suddenly, just gently. The heart softens, the tension loosens, The mind slows down. The lovers of God understood this deeply. They knew remembrance was not something extra. It was not something reserved for special moments. Remembrance was returning home. You feel this during the day. You are busy, moving quickly, thinking constantly, and suddenly you remember, even for a second, Allah, and something inside you becomes calm. The situation may not change. The conversation may still be difficult. The worry may still be there, but you feel anchored. This is the heart remembering its sanctuary. The mystics often spoke about the heart like this: a place that remains calm even when the world is noisy, a place that remains close even when you feel distant. And remembrance opens that space, quietly, gently, without effort. You may notice this after an argument. Your chest feels tight. Your thoughts replay the conversation. You feel restless. Then you remember, not perfectly, not for long, just briefly. And that brief remembrance begins to soften everything. This is the return. This is what Surah Fatiha has been guiding you toward all along, from distance to noticing, from noticing to witnessing, from witnessing to remembrance. And now something beautiful becomes clear. Surah Fatiha is not just a recitation. It is a journey. The great master taught that every time you recite it, you are returning. Even when you feel distracted, even when you feel distant, even when you feel nothing at all. Because the heart remembers, even when the mind forgets. This is why the mystics never worried too much about distance. They knew distance was part of the return. They knew restlessness was part of awakening. They knew confusion was part of guidance. And slowly, the waves begin to calm. You still live your life. You still face challenges. You still experience emotion. But something inside you is different now. You feel closer, even in ordinary moments. You feel calmer, even in uncertainty. You feel held, even in silence. The ocean returns to stillness, and you begin to understand what Ibn Arabi saw hidden in Surah Fatiha. It was never just an opening. It was the whole journey, from need to guidance, from guidance to witnessing, from witnessing to remembrance, from remembrance to nearness. And now, every time you recite it, something changes. Not outside, inside, quietly, gently, like returning home. And maybe the distance you once feared was never distance at all. Maybe it was the beginning of nearness, the beginning of remembrance, the beginning of return. And the heart finally rests.